So, welcome everyone. I'm Alexander Mihalcha, and today we have one of the industry leaders, Keith Ong, practice lead of Vuealta Consulting. Welcome, Keith. How are you doing today?
Good. Approaching the end of a busy day here at work today.
Okay, awesome. And I'm excited to have you on the podcast today, and I'm sure you're going to be of great value for the audience.
Great
Now,
pleasure and honor to be here.
before we dive in, could you give us a quick overview of what Vuelta Consulting does?
All right. Vuealta Consulting is a consulting company. We are focused a little bit more on supply chain solutions, but we have implemented solutions and we do consulting for various different use cases for various different industries. So we've had projects and engagements in FP&A. We've had engagements in workforce planning. We've had engagements in sales performance management. But by and large, I think our focus niche area where we're really, really good at is supply chain.
Okay, that's really interesting. And basically, what inspired you to join Vuelta Consulting?
Um, so my background is a bit more unique and interesting, I would say. Personally, I used to be a full-time poker player. Um, and I've been playing the game for many, many years now. Unfortunately, I couldn't it kind of grinded to a halt during COVID because I couldn't travel. In the past, I was staying full time in different locations overseas, Las Vegas. I'm Singaporean, for by the way. So in the past, I used to stay full time in Las Vegas. I used to travel to Macau. For a period of time, I was playing in London. Um, but when COVID hit, I was basically kind of grounded in Singapore. And Singapore's poker scene, while the home poker scene now is kind of booming, back then, with COVID and all the, meeting restrictions of gathering of number of people,
Yeah.
basically that wasn't a thing anymore. Online poker is not legal in Singapore as well. So therefore, I couldn't really go down and continue pursuing the path. I couldn't travel and I couldn't really do much. So I was looking for a career, a regular corporate career that kind of aligns still with a little bit of my interests.
Mhm.
My background is in microeconomics. That's what I studied in university. That's what my degree is in. Um, Very driven by the idea of pricing strategies, optimization, game theory, a lot of it which is also applicable in poker. Therefore, a very natural path that appealed to me was consulting. And very much similar to what I do today as well, with regards to demand planning optimization, and how to improve forecast accuracy for businesses. So I would say consulting is very similar to poker in a lot of sense, in such that it's a lot of continuous learning, right?
Right.
Even with poker, anyone who tells you that they mastered, I don't think anyone decent would ever say that they've mastered the game. Everyone's always a student of the game. Same with consulting. Everyone's always a student of consulting. There's always something new to learn. There's always something new you discover. With the different people you talk to, you always learn different things. And I think that path of continuous learning is something that appealed to me. And therefore, when I switched into the corporate world of consulting, I've never really looked back. I mean, it still captured my interest. It still captures my interest, and it's still something that I'm interested in and very keen to develop in continuously.
Okay, that's really fascinating. And you mentioned that you have like a fascinating career as a full-time poker player. But for example, what skills that you learn from that experience that are applicable to the consulting one?
Um, Interestingly enough, so poker playing is a little bit about making reads on people. What are people thinking when they do certain things? When the opponent bets, when the opponent folds, if the opponent has certain tendencies, what's going on in his head? So similarly to what I study in for my degree, which is behavioral economics and game theory, where it's really driven about what people are thinking, there's a lot of that that's applied in consulting as well, right? Why does a business want to do things this way? Um, you have to really understand the logic behind the business problems to be able to solve that. I think that's one of the main transferable skill, I think, between the two things. It's not immediately obvious, but it becomes intuitive in the consulting world once you've kind of developed it in the poker world, right? A lot of intuition, for
Yeah.
example, if a client says, "Hey, I'm facing this problem, I don't know what to do," sometimes the underlying cause of the problem is not something that he immediately makes obvious. But if you do think about the rationale of why he's raising it up, why his business would be facing this problem, the kind of competition he's facing in the market, that speaks volumes into giving you insight on how to solve those problems.
Okay, okay, I see the comparison here. And for example, regarding to this, what are like the biggest challenges companies facing in demanding like planning and forecasting?
Um, the main challenge in demand forecasting is a little bit on how people can't ever get it perfect, right? You may say you have a very satisfactory demand forecast. Maybe it's at 80%, maybe it's 85%. It really also depends on the industry you're in and the kind of customers that you have. A firm that's doing a demand forecast or sales forecast that's very largely driven by sales numbers given by customers and it's a very steady flow, sure, they could get it quite accurate, but at the same time occasionally we have clients that have customers saying, oh, I'm going to purchase X amount of units from you this year, and then they don't meet that agreement, or that target, and perhaps contractually they were never obliged to meet those numbers as well, because there was no way to confirm those numbers. Um, there's always that gap, right? Improving that gap and finding out not what you can improve to increase the number by even 1%, by even 5%, as you get more and more accurate. So if you're really really far off from being accurate at all, you could be at, let example, companies at 20%. They're doing everything wrong, or the data that's coming in is just so messy and they don't really know how to interpret it. Then there's a lot of work that needs to be done. If a company is at 80%, finding that last 5% is going to be really difficult. Finding the last 20% is going to be really difficult, right? Especially in the case of firms where they're the B2C, they've got a lot of customers, they've got a lot of volume, and they can't really. It's very hard to kind of predict where the market is going, where the demand is going, without the help of some slightly more sophisticated software. And even with the help of slightly more sophisticated software, you're never going to get 100%. But the interest to capture that last 5%, even a 5% increase in accuracy is going to give you like it's compounded down in your margins, right?
Yeah,
And then you're going to get like 10% increase in margin, 15% increase in margins. And when it comes to a big business, those numbers really matter.
right, right, makes sense. Okay, and you mentioned, for example, about the importance of granularity. So, can you explain how the level of detail impacts the effectiveness of planning?
Sure. So different business want to have accurate demand forecasts for different reasons, right? And the granularity at which you are planning for is also going to differ from your business to business. An example, let's say, and it's very tied into a supply and a production problem as well. Example, a firm says, hey, I want to know how much of a specific product I need to sell, right? So on a basic level, maybe people talk about demand forecasting and say, oh, okay, you need to know how much of a specific product you need to sell this year, so I know how much I need to produce, right? But at the end of the day, if a firm is going to ship out, example, if a firm is going to ship out uh, product by shipments to different countries to different customers, example, let's say your firm is going to ship out 100 units of a good to China, where you have five customers demanding 20 units each, example, right?
Right.
Does it really matter if all five clients ask for 20 units and they really, uh, your forecast was 20 units and they really demanded for 20 units? If there was 10 units less of one customer and 10 units more of another customer, the overall shipment amount is still the same. So now you're kind of solving a little bit of scheduling problem. Did it really matter that your demand forecast by customer wasn't that accurate? Not really, because you don't incur additional cost. The main
Right.
focus of this problem would be that instead of 100 units being on that boat, on the shipment going out to China, now you needed you only had 80. They only demanded 80 units in China, right, across all five customers. Then now your ship isn't full, and there's things that you could have done to kind of optimize that and reduce your cost in that sense. Whereas for a different company, it could be they're manufacturing food. They produce too much food on across all the products, and then only measure it by product, or by measure it by across all products, and therefore a lot of the food goes to waste, for example, because I couldn't find a new customer to purchase it. Then at that in that example, you then plan by product. You don't really care about customer. So it's really limited to kind of, or rather, it's really dependent on what kind of granularity your problem is at, your cost problem is at, right? And that's where you really want to solve the problem.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, right. But for example, how do you balance the use of traditional statistical forecasting tools with the advanced like of AI and ML?
That's tricky, right? So the way I see it, or the way I explain AI, ML, is really, especially with regards to forecasting, it's really more advanced tools. It's just traditional statistical forecasting taken to the next level. So there are softwares out there that give you access to, let's say, 24, 84, X number amounts of traditional statistical time series forecasting methodologies. And then they kind of rank them according to, okay, this one has the least error, therefore you want to use this forecasting method, so on and so forth. AI ML forecasting is just an additional level of forecasting method, right?
Yeah.
It didn't exist in the past, but it exists today. So I think the key to using AI is really looking at whether it is relevant to your business or not, right? More options are always better. So having that option available and having it be able to compare traditional forecasting methods and seeing which one performs better, there's no loss. There's only win, right? It's a no lose situation. Instead of comparing between, let's say, 10 traditional methods, you're now comparing 10 traditional with 10 AIML driven methods, right? And then you can just see which one performs best for a company and then go with that.
Right, right, makes sense. Okay, but for example, you've seen like what's working and what's not in this industry. But for example, what's the one growth challenge you think the industry still hasn't solved yet?
A growth challenge that the industry hasn't solved yet.
Yet and well, you can add it.
Sorry, come again?
So yet and well, like the best for now.
All right. One growth problem the industry hasn't solved yet. I think. Okay. First and foremost, I think AI is very much. I think it's more than a buzzword, but I think a lot of people kind of. And one thing I see as well with all the requests that does come into to us in terms of people coming to us say they want to apply AI in their
Mhm.
solutions, right? Is that people sometimes need to take the time to think if AI is relevant for the business. So let me give an example, right? I run a fast food business and I sell a million burgers a year. Now it matters whether I sell a million burgers to one customer who then redistributes it out, or I'm selling one burger to a million people. Right? This is the example I love to give because if I'm selling a million burgers to one person and then it's his problem to kind of redistribute the 1 million burgers, but contractually he signs with me and says I'm going to buy a million burgers. There's no need for AI. It makes more sense
Right,
for me to communicate with him, with my one customer, and say, all right, you think you will have 1 million burgers? Are you sure you're gonna have 1 million burgers? Can we get a sign on the dotted line to say that you pay for 1 million burgers, and if you don't, these are the penalties accordingly. And then that gives you a very firm idea of how many burgers you're gonna sell to that one customer. You can't do the same thing with a million customers, right? And that's where the law of large numbers come in, and that's where AI is relevant, right?
right,
You can't speak to a million people, but you need to have a sensing of how the demand is going to evolve over time, or evolve with different market conditions. And that's where AIML would be very beneficial. The business first needs to think before any business jumps into whether or not AI is relevant. They need to think about whether AI can really help them, whether it fits their business, and if it does, what kind of use case is it good for?
right, makes sense. Okay, and now walk us through how Volta Consulting addresses these challenges. What makes your approach unique?
Um, So rather than a client coming to us and saying, "Hey, look, I'm looking for an AI solution for my business. This is how I want to do it," the first step we really do is we kind of break it down, right? We do advisory first, and then following that, then we do the implementation. So advisory is broken out in two parts. First is we need to analyze the situation of your business. We need to understand your business better. Um, we don't claim to be experts at running a business better than you do, so therefore, you are still the expert of how your business runs, what works, what doesn't, what challenges you face, and so on and so forth. So we start off first by shadowing the process, right? Talk us through your current process, walk with us, do your BAU, and we kind of observe. Thereafter, we give feedback on, okay, these are the things that we notice about business that we see it being done differently in different companies of the same industry. Are these changes that you will be opposed to applying, or are these changes you're interested in implementing, right? We believe these changes will to your process will benefit your business. How do you feel about that? Then we have that conversation and we give that advisory. If they're interested, we give them, clear steps ahead of, okay, these are the things you change. These are the people we need to talk to. So from the top down, you need to kind of convince your company to make those changes. And if they're ready and they're willing to make the changes, what kind of tools can then support these changes? And then that's where we go into the
Mhm.
tech side of things.
Yeah, okay, makes sense.
But we
And
really try to avoid like a lift or shift method, right? You tell us what you want and then we just do it. Because
yeah,
in that sense, we don't value it anymore and we could be leading you down the wrong path as well.
like a doctor, basically.
Exactly. Like a doctor, yeah, yeah. You diagnose the problem and they say, the patient comes in and says, "Hey, I want antibiotics. I don't feel well." The doctor doesn't just prescribe the antibiotics straight away. He goes, "All right, first I gotta ask you about symptoms. I gotta know if the antibiotic is relevant, and if it's not, he's just gonna say it's a viral infection. You don't need antibiotics. You just need a couple of medicine to kind of soothe the symptoms, and then your body will fight it by itself, right?"
Right.
Um, the doctor isn't there to just he isn't like a
Yeah, yeah,
pharmacist, basically. Yes, exactly like I described. Yeah.
yeah. And you made an interesting point about like the AI not being relevant for every situation. And for
Mhm.
example, how do you help companies determine if AI is the best or not solutions for their needs?
We look at the data, right? A lot of AI and tech tools is revolves around data science. A lot of the work revolves around data science, to be honest. We look at the data, we look at what you're trying to solve. We look at whether it's a process problem or is it a data problem, right? If AI solves a data science problem that you have, then yes, then we recommend it. But if it's not a data science, if after the data science we look at it, it's not really a problem that's solved by AI, then we just say no. AI is not that useful for you. And I've given out that advice more than a few times before to different customers where I just straight up say, look, you don't have the data required for AI to be useful for you. You don't have the level of transactions. You don't have the quantity of transactions. Your data isn't big enough. What you're facing is, example, one recent advice I gave was, what you're facing is problem with your data cleanliness. You don't know how to interpret the data because the data isn't clean, but you don't have enough data for AI to function that well. It doesn't learn anything from the limited set of data that you have. You need to baseline a more rudimentary method and then apply a lot of human touch to it.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Okay, that's super interesting. And basically, on the flip side, I'm curious when you look at your like team deliver that experience day to day, how much like of it relies on manual workflows versus automated systems right now, like with AI.
We try to automate as far as possible. One thing that still has quite a bit of manual touch that we do is scenario planning. And the reason for it is this, right? The client knows better most of the times what kind of scenarios that they need to be prepared for, right? They know what hurts, they know what doesn't. This is based on years and years of experience in the industry, and they go, okay, these are the scenarios that I need to be prepared for, and these are the scenarios that will hurt me a lot. So therefore, in these cases, how will my business respond? What will my demand look like? And therefore, how quickly do I need to adjust my production? How agile am I? So on and so forth. Um, AI sometimes hallucinates and gives you a lot of scenarios that are very far fetched and probably won't happen. That can sometimes happen. And therefore, I would say, AI is really useful for forecasting in terms of big data. If you give it a set amount of data and say what's most likely going to happen, it can probably give you a relatively good answer. But in terms of scenario planning, it's saying, okay, if tomorrow, let's say tariffs are implemented for my exports, AI can't really predict that, right? Because that doesn't have a if you look at history of time, you can't really predict when tariffs are going to kick in. Right? It has to have a manual touch of understanding the political landscape, so on and so forth, to be able to kind of implement that touch. So I would say I can't give you an exact percentage per se, but I would say the planning solutions that we develop, which are tech supported manual processes, are very different. Solves a different problem from what we use AI for in terms of forecasting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. And for example, when you talk to potential clients, what's the biggest misconception they typically have about what you do?
Um, So we implement tech solutions for people. So a lot of clients come to us saying, same example as a doctor, right? Walk into the clinic, they come in and they say, hey, look, I need a solution that does this for me. It might not be the most high value solution that you can get, right? If you give us some time to walk backwards a little bit, look at the root cause of why you're asking this, we
Right.
may prescribe a different solution for you. You need what I like to tell my clients is that you need to give us this opening to kind of walk you through that. Right? I don't want to implement a solution for you that you asked for, and then it doesn't give you the results that you want, and then you turn around and you kind of put a fault on us. Right? If a patient walks into the clinic and asks for antibiotics, but antibiotics doesn't really solve his issue, his underlying medical condition, he's going to turn around and say, "Yeah, this doctor's not that good." Yeah, um, he didn't make me feel better. But that's because you never allowed the doctor to kind of diagnose your symptoms and tell you what's really wrong. You have to trust the process. You have to be a bit more open minded and give the doctor that chance.
100%. Yeah. And now looking at a broader industry, what are like the emerging trends in demand planning and forecasting?
Definitely AI, right? Especially in, I think, in terms of industries, I think in terms of fast moving goods, retail, retail, food, F&B, manufacturing, things like this. In fast moving goods, AI is definitely the trend. We see a lot of solutions come up and coming that tries to solve this problem, and tries to add value in that sense. This is definitely very popular. Another popular buzzword and thing that goes around is demand sensing, right? Based on different, being able to adjust to short-term indicators, to adjust the demand plan in short-term indicators, being sensitive to specific different key factors and features in the market. That's something that a lot of businesses are looking at. I think even you'd be surprised, right? Even some of the most mature manufacturing industry, companies in the FMCG business don't actually know how to apply this, don't have the team to set up to kind of achieve the outcomes that they're looking for, but also don't realize how many of their competitors are actually doing it. I think this would
Right.
definitely be a growing trend. It's been around for ages already, but given the amount of clients that do have interesting conversations with us about demand sensing, I'm honestly always surprised at how little it is being implemented in the industry.
Okay, okay. And for example, in your opinion, what advice would you give to companies looking to improve their supply chain planning?
Talk to an expert. Invest in data science. Investing in data science is huge. Actually, you could have an in-house team of data scientists who kind of do it. You could talk to us, for example, on how we do it, what kind of advice we'll give. More than happy to kind of help anyone who's interested in this. I think that's main advice, right? I'm sure some of the I'm not I'm sure I know that some of the giants in the FMCG businesses do invest heavily in data science, do invest heavily in AI. They develop their own in-house AI technology. That works if you have a huge capital. Some companies with a huge capital don't have the time or never really shifted the focus. They undervalue the impact of what it could do, because a lot of times companies say, "Hey, look, what I'm doing right now works. It works enough. I've got 80% forecast accuracy. I'm making a decent profit. Why do I need to invest more to achieve that last 20%?" Well, simple answer is, if I told you tomorrow that if you speak to me, and we did something for you, your forecast accuracy goes up by 3%, and your business is big enough that 3% is $30 million in
Yeah.
saving in wastage, right? Would you say no? You wouldn't, right? You'd be like, yeah, that's $30 million I could save right now. Therefore, I'd invest $1 million in figuring out what's going on if I could save that $30 million. Don't be complacent. That would be one of the big advice. Don't be complacent with your current results. Always look for areas to improve. And I think one of the biggest key ways of improvement is really studying data, getting a solid data science team, getting people with good solid data science background to kind of look at your data, look at your forecasts, and really analyzing to see if anything can be done better. It's always worth a look, right? It's like I love the medical analogy, so I'm going to go back to it. It's like going for a health checkup. You think you're fine. Just go back every 1 2 years to do a full body checkup. Find out if there's anything wrong. There's anything that can be better, right? Maybe start to get some exercise in. Maybe it's your blood sugar's on the high side. You won't know these things until you really spend some time to look at it.
Right, right, right. But for example, when you look at those companies in your space like approach growth, what separates the ones like that break through from those that like that plateau?
Oh, the investment to continual improvement, right? We've got some of our big clients have a huge R&D department, or like a huge department that really looks at how to improve, right? They are the forefront of some of the things we do. Sometimes we go to them and we speak to them a little bit. So we've got one of the clients that recently I spoke to. that I said, hey, look, is there anything in the AI space we can do for you? Because we're doing this with your competitors. Is this something you might be interested in? And they go, yeah, we're already looking at it. And we already have a team kind of developing, which kind of surprised us because they kind of kept it on a hush hush. And they're trying to develop something in house. And that really speaks to why they're doing so well, right? They're investing in continual improvement. They're really looking at it. They don't go, oh, we're doing well enough. That's all we've got to do.
Yeah, right. And what's fascinating is how often it comes down to the repeatability. I mean,
Yeah,
the winners systemize what works before chasing the new, and
correct.
that's where like most scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for example, before we wrap up, I'm curious about what's on the horizon. So when you look at Vuealta Consulta's journey over the next few years, what possibilities excite you the most?
Oh, that's that's interesting because right now that's an interesting question. Right now, we're really excited to do. We really enjoy what we do right now, right? I think the work that we do is really meaningful. It's very quantifiable. You know, when we do well, it's very obvious, right? You immediately see the improvement in the results. Similar to poker, that's kind of why I enjoy it, I guess. Specifically with regards to forecasting, you know, poker you do well, you make a lot of money. In demand forecasting, you do it well, you make a lot of money as well, right? So it's very clear when the results are good. When you do something well, it's very clear. One thing that's really interesting for us is that right now we're focused on F&B, but I do think that there's some, you know, we can transit to different industries, right? For example, there's a huge gap in retail that can be kind of observed that with different features that affects the market. Even in pharmaceutical, with regards to demographics, with regards to, you know, if we treated demographics, demographics as one of the features, you know, that's an industry that's really interesting. I have worked in different industries, but right now our focus really is with regards to F&B. But in the next 3 years, I'm really keen to look at some other industries as well and see how we can help them there and, you know, develop the kind of expertise and experience in those industries.
Okay, okay, interesting. And for example, for listeners who want to learn more or potentially work with Vuelta Consulting, what's the best way to get in touch?
Please feel free to reach out to me personally. I'm always open. My LinkedIn is always open. Please feel free to reach out to us. Drop me a message. I'm happy to have a conversation. Just an exploratory conversation with anyone. I'm a student of the game, just like I'm a student of poker. I'm a student of the consulting game. I'm a student of the forecasting game. Happy to have conversations with that. We do like to host roundtables as well to develop a community around forecasting, so people can come together, share their ideas. It's really good for personal networking as well, to really know your peers in the same industry, in the same solving the same problems, to see where experiences lie. We just want to. The team and I really just want to foster like a really collaborative environment where people can come together and share and kind of build a community that way.
Okay, perfect. So thanks for joining today, Keith, and for this amazing podcast session. And for anyone listening, make sure to check out Vuelta Consulting socials below in the description because this episode was packed with value and I can wait to see what you build next.
Thank you, Alex. Great to be here.
Great, see you in